Invasion of Ukraine continues. Thousands are fleeing their homes.
Here's what you have here now, the shell of a bus being used as a barricade.
I heard some explosions and the soldiers told us to leave very quickly.
We've spoken to people forced to come by their employers or promised the day off if they would come.
See the headlines as they happen with breaking news alerts in the app and get the full story with bbc.com/news. Follow the latest on the Russian invasion of Ukraine with BBC News.
This is BBC News. Welcome if you're watching here in the UK or around the globe. I'm Samantha Simmons. Our top stories. Armoured vehicles and new missiles. Boris Johnson pledges more support to
make sure that Ukraine is successful, that Ukraine wins, and that Putin must fail.
10 humanitarian corridors are agreed to help thousands of Ukrainians flee the war. One is providing an escape from Mariupol, which has been described as hell on earth.
Making his way down, and there we are.
And mission accomplished as the first all-private astronaut team ever launched to the International Space Station completes docking. Hello. Well, we'll start with the UK Prime Minister because Boris Johnson has travelled to Kyiv to hold face-to-face talks with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Downing Street says they are discussing the UK's long-term support to Ukraine, and the Prime Minister will set out a new package of financial and military aid, which includes 120 armoured vehicles and new anti-ship missile systems. Well, the meeting comes as Ukrainian officials say 10 humanitarian corridors to evacuate people from regions besieged by Russian forces have been agreed for today. It's thought around 10,000 people have escaped from cities in the south and east through those means over the past 2 days. President Zelensky says a firm global response is needed after yesterday's missile strike on a railway station in Kramatorsk, which killed at least 50 people. Boris Johnson said that this was an opportunity to ensure that Ukraine was never invaded again.
Heraclitus, I think, said war is the father of all things. I mean, that was an exaggeration. War isn't the father of everything. But what this war is certainly producing is a clarity about the vision of a future for Ukraine, where together with friends and partners, we, the UK and others, supply the equipment, the technology, the know-how, the intelligence, so that Ukraine will never be invaded again, so that Ukraine is so fortified and so protected that Ukraine can never be bullied again, never be blackmailed again, never be threatened in the same way again. In the meantime, there is a huge amount to do to make sure that Ukraine is successful, that Ukraine wins, and that Putin must fail.
Well, President Zelensky thanked the UK government for its support and called on other nations to follow suit.
We are especially grateful for this to happen. This is a true reflection of the decisive and significant support to Ukraine from United Kingdom, and we always are grateful for that. We shall always remember that. Just recently we had a meeting in Kiev, and you've recalled this. We draw some conclusions on our joint work in the frames of a strategic dialogue. We were planning future projects We were wandering around Kiev, and today you can see in your own eyes how our country looks like, you know, how our villages, how our settlements look like because of Russian aggression. There could be only one conclusion. It's our common conclusion. We have to exert even more pressure on the Russian Federation, to exert pressure through supporting Ukraine in defending itself. We have to exert pressure in the form of sanctions, and I'm grateful to the United Kingdom that continues and intensifies the sanctions and also provides significant support of Ukraine by reinforcing our defense capacities. The other democratic Western countries should follow the example of the United Kingdom.
Well, let's speak to our correspondent in Kyiv, Yigita Lemay, who is there for us. Hi, Yigita. Just how significant do you think this meeting was between President Zelensky and Prime Minister Boris Johnson?
Well, with Prime Minister Boris Johnson now coming here after the European Commission President, this is a European show of solidarity for Ukraine. It is significant in the sense that, the Prime Minister, also announced something for Ukraine, which is those armored vehicles, the anti-ship missile systems. Yesterday, there was an announcement of £100 million in weapons to this country, which include anti-tank missiles and anti-aircraft missiles, and basically discussing the road ahead. Prime Minister Boris Johnson very clearly saying that yes, Russian forces have withdrawn from some areas in Ukraine, from Kyiv here in the north where we are, but he clearly sees this as a tactical move and not the end of Russian aggression, which he says continues in the east. Yesterday, of course, we saw that attack at the Kramatorsk station where more than 50 people who were waiting for trains to get out to safety were killed. While Kremlin says it didn't launch missiles, it rejected that it was the one that launched, in addition to more pressure on Russia, intensifying sanctions against the country.
Yigita Lemay in Kyiv for now, thank you. Civilians in eastern Ukraine have been urged to leave the area immediately because Russian forces may be planning a mass assault. 2 missiles hit a train station in the city of Kramatorsk on Friday, killing more than 50 people trying to escape fighting in the area. At least 4 of the dead are children. Our defence correspondent Jonathan Beale sent us this report from the city.
They were supposed to be taking a train to safety, but instead they were leaving Kramatorsk by ambulance. Most of the severely injured in yesterday's missile attack had already been taken west to larger hospitals. These, the walking wounded, still needing surgery to remove the pieces of shrapnel from their bodies, and still clearly traumatized.
I heard a lot of explosions and I fell down. When I got up, a lot of people were already dead. It was only me who stood up from the floor. It's a wonder. God saved me. I have a penetrating chest injury from one side and my legs are wounded, like everywhere.
I got the shrapnel into my groin, into my artery. I fainted twice, lost a lot of blood.
Medical staff worked day and night to save the lives of the dozens injured. Not all made it. 6 died before they had a chance to operate, including a young child.
There were life-threatening injuries, amputations, torn limbs, torn feet. What happened? It just can't be explained. I can't imagine what kind of person takes the decision to launch a missile into a place where civilians are gathering.
These were the chaotic scenes after the strike. Thousands had gathered at Kramatorsk station, hoping to get a train to safety. Many of them women and children. They were among the dozens of bodies lying on the ground. Alexei was still looking through the wreckage this morning. Normally, he helps recover the bodies of Ukrainian troops killed in battle. But yesterday, he was having to gather the remains of unarmed civilians, the innocents of this war.
Какие эмоции у меня были или что?
When you see our future being killed, the future of Ukraine, you can't control your emotions. You understand this is genocide, and they're killing us just because we're Ukrainian. And you can see that when you look at the bodies of the women and children.
Investigators were still examining the remains of a missile nearby. Eyewitnesses say they saw multiple explosions, raising the possibility that it may have contained cluster munitions. It's still not clear what exactly happened here, whether this missile might have been shot down, and that's why some of it's still intact. But the state railway company says that a number of people here think it was a deliberate attack. Jonathan Beale, BBC News, Kramatorsk.
The Pakistan Parliament is still to decide whether to remove Imran Khan as Prime Minister, days after he blocked a similar attempt. A vote of no confidence was due on Saturday. There have been angry scenes in Parliament between Mr Khan's supporters and opponents. Last Monday, the Supreme Court ruled that he acted unconstitutionally when he asked the President to dissolve Parliament before the vote could take place. Well, Aisha Siddiqa is Senior Fellow at King's College London and an expert in civil-military relations in the South Asia region and joins me now, as you can see. Welcome to you. Thanks very much for being with us. The latest we're hearing is that Imran Khan is meeting with Pakistan's army chief. Just explain to us how important that relationship is between the army and the government.
Well, it's generally believed that it's the worsening of this relationship which has led to the crisis or led to the situation where the political opposition was encouraged to raise their voice against Khan, and thus creating the conditions which now have led to where Khan and Pakistan stand.
Imran Khan is claiming this vote of no confidence is, as he called it, a foreign-funded drama, saying that the US is behind this. What do you make of that? Is there any evidence of that?
See, basically what he has done and wrongly manipulated an internal communique between Pakistan's ambassador in the United States and the Foreign Office and its internal communication. I mean, it's just like, for example, a British ambassador in Moscow. What would he be telling, say, the Russian government or the Russian government if they were meeting UK's ambassador? They would be expressing their anger or dissatisfaction with, say, the Boris Johnson government. This is exactly what happened. The Assistant Secretary of State probably met the Pakistan's ambassador and said, look, as long as Imran Khan is there, I don't think we are going to have good relations. And this is exactly, the state of relations. It wasn't two-sided. Now, Imran Khan's government is using that internal communique, illegally leaking it and saying, basing its claim on that there was a conspiracy to remove, when there is no evidence whatsoever of a conspiracy, an American conspiracy to remove Imran Khan. I mean, they're making it look like regime change, which is an atrocious claim.
Just briefly, Dr. Siddiqa, what reaction has there been from ordinary Pakistanis to this drama as it plays out?
I personally think what Imran Khan is doing at the moment is two things. Firstly, he's actually preparing for elections because he understands that he will have to say goodbye and elections will have to be held. He will no longer be the Prime Minister. He's not legally. But he's building up a narrative and a kind of emotions and trying to turn popular again, which he is, by the way, so that when it comes on the winning side, at least that's what he feels.
Dr. Aisha Siddiqa, thank you very much for your analysis. Thank you. Now, the first all-private mission to the International Space Station has docked. The crew, consisting of a pilot and 3 passengers, have been welcomed inside the International Space Station. They are due to spend 8 days orbiting the Earth. The flight is being hailed as a milestone in the commercialisation of space flight.
We have to deal simultaneously with significant institutional systemic reform.
Africa will always remain important for me, and so I will continue doing what I do.
Most people are not going to judge 2022 by what Trump said. They're going to judge.
I think feminism is fundamentally a justice movement.
There will not be any long-term sustainable peace or stability in Afghanistan unless all the factions, all the ethnic groups are represented.
When big names talk, they talk to the BBC.
Rudy Rosati.
Why do they spend so much on these spectacular extravaganzas?
Theatrical events were being made just to show the power of a dynasty.
I'm Katrin Nye, an investigative journalist. A year ago, I found out about a glamorous design agency that had staff from all over the world.
France voted for change 5 years ago. Emmanuel Macron said reform would weaken the appeal of the far right. But as France prepares to vote again, the far-right leader Marine Le Pen seems closer than ever to beating him. Join us live as France decides, here on BBC World News.
Since Russia invaded Ukraine, hundreds of thousands of people have passed through Lviv train station hoping to reach safety.
Can you believe this?
Watch their extraordinary stories on Our World, Platform 5, Escaping Ukraine, on BBC World News.
Catch up with all the latest sports news and results from around the globe. Now on BBC World News, Sport Today.
Hello there, I'm Ollie Foster. We are live at the BBC Sports Centre. Here's what's coming up for you on Sport Today. Can anyone catch the world number one, Scotty Scheffler? He tees off shortly in the third round of the Masters. Charles Leclerc is the one to catch in Melbourne. And also denies Manchester United a top four finish in the Premier League. Welcome along to the programme. It's moving day at the Masters. The third round is well underway at Augusta, but the last few groups are yet to tee off, including the world number one, Scotty Scheffler, who has really set the pace at the top of the leaderboard. On 8 under, the American shot 67 on Friday, taking a 5-stroke lead into the weekend. That included a birdie on the 16th after that tee shot. He says he is excited for the weekend.
I'm looking forward to the challenge of tomorrow, but, you know, I wouldn't say much changes. I mean, I'm still playing the golf course. There's still, 50 guys in the field, something like that, I'm sure. And, I can't worry about what those guys are doing. I'm just going to go out and play my game and just keep doing what I'm doing.
Well, the reigning Masters champion, Eki Matsuyama, is one shot of the day at the 10th. Charles Schwartzel and Im Sung-jae are also in that quartet of players chasing Scheffler. Tiger Woods at least made the cut, but he was a long way off the pace on 1 over at the halfway stage. He's playing in his first competitive tournament, remember, since recovering from a very serious car crash 14 months ago. He says he's just grateful for the work of all those around him to get him back on the course.
Proud of the fact that my whole team got me into this position. We worked hard to get me here to where I had an opportunity, and then not to have any, as I said, any setbacks this week. And we haven't. Kept progressing, and along the way I kept getting my feels and hitting shots. I was able to practice and get my touch. I haven't played a lot of competitive golf, and so it's taken me a little bit to get used to it, but I finally got my eye back.
Just great that he made the cut, but he slipped further back. Double bogey on the 5th. He's 3 over Woods. Wherever you are around the world, you can follow all the weekend. The Formula One weekend, Ferrari Charles Leclerc has pole position after a dramatic qualifying. Fernando Alonso. Nick Parrott reports.
After 3 years without a race, fans in Melbourne were keen to see some drama. It didn't take long for qualifying at Albert Park to deliver some. Canadians Nicholas Latifi and Lance Stroll had a little misunderstanding, and their day came to a premature end. Lewis Hamilton almost suffered a similar fate. On a fast lap, he came across Max Verstappen on a slow one. Hamilton's day didn't get much better. The Briton was on pole last time he raced here, but could only manage 5th. Fernando Alonso felt he was on course to finish in the top 3, until this happened. That delayed qualifying for a second time. When it resumed, world champion Verstappen set the time to beat. And then Charles Leclerc smashed it to put his Ferrari on pole for the second time this season.
We really worked hard. It was a bit messy for the free practices session for me. I managed to do some good laps, but not everything together. And yeah, in Q3 I managed to put everything together, so it feels great, and yeah, very happy to be starting.
I think there's not been one lap where I actually felt confident, so a bit of a struggle. Of course, second is still a good result, but yeah, just not feeling that great to go to the limit. So we'll try to analyze it.
So the stage appears set for another showdown between the winners of the 2 races so far. Nick Parrott, BBC News.
Some European football for you now. There was a huge win for Everton in their battle to stay in the English Premier League. They beat a very lacklustre Manchester United 1-0 at Goodison Park, and that's put a big dent in United's ambitions for a top 4 finish. But what a win, courtesy of Academy product Anthony Gordon's first half deflected goal. For United, that could be it for their hopes of a top 4 finish.
The reality of the position is clear with us. You can feel that in the stadium. But at the same time, we're good here at Goodison. We've been good in my time here. We've won 5 out of 7 games. We don't concede like we do away from home. That's another question. But at the same time, the fighting spirit that we showed, the qualities that we showed, are a big deal for us, and we need to replicate that. It's 3 points, it's 1 win. We need more.
As long as we don't win our own games, it doesn't make sense to hope for good results from the other teams. And as I said, especially in the first half hour, we should have scored a goal or 2 out of that first half hour, but we didn't. And then all of a sudden, being 1 goal down, it changed the whole game.
Chelsea had the biggest win of the day, thrashed Southampton 6-0 at St Mary's, having lost to Brentford and Real Madrid in the last week. Thomas Tuchel's side hit back in great fashion. Mason Mount and Timo Werner with a couple each, alongside Marcos Alonso and Kai Havertz.
Like I said, right after the match against Real Madrid, first of all, it's necessary to do the turnaround here and not wait for the response and think about the response in Bernabeu. This will be a very, very difficult task, and there's no change to it. But we did what was necessary, and this is the good news. And now we have 2 days to recover and to try what's possible on Tuesday.
Arsenal's push for the top 4 in Champions League qualification is fading. They lost 2-1 at home to Brighton. Spurs are going to move 3 points clear of the Gunners in 4th. Son Heung-min has scored a hat-trick. They're winning 4-0. Against Aston Villa away. Full-time whistle there. They have won 4-0. Leeds took a big step towards Premier League safety. 3-0 winners against fellow strugglers Watford. Leeds 9 points clear of the relegation zone now, but they've played more games than those teams below them. Real Madrid will be bidding to strengthen their grip at the top of La Liga when they welcome Getafe to the Bernabeu on Saturday night. Real took a big step towards the semi-finals of the Champions League. That 3-1 victory over Chelsea in the first leg of their quarter-final, with Karim Benzema scoring a hat-trick at Stamford Bridge. Carlo Ancelotti's team currently top of the table, 9 points clear of second-place Sevilla. Bayern Munich needed a late Robert Lewandowski penalty to edge past Augsburg at the Allianz Arena in the Bundesliga after their Champions League defeat at Villarreal. Bundesliga leaders again failed to convince against the side just a few points above the relegation playoffs. The winner came inside the last 10 minutes. Bayern sit 9 points clear of Borussia Dortmund at the top. Following their crucial Derby d'Italia triumph last weekend against Juve, reigning champions Inter Milan beat Hellas Verona 2-0. They're a point behind Serie A leaders AC Milan. Kicking off soon, Juve will be looking to bounce back from that defeat, consolidate their top 4 spot with a win at Cagliari. Empoli against Spezia, that was goalless. Two-year role as head coach of England men in February following their heavy Ashes defeat in Australia. Signed a 2-year deal with Sri Lanka's men. He's going to take charge of the side for their 2-test tour of Bangladesh next month. Rachel Balkovec made history on Friday. She's become the first woman to manage a minor league affiliate of a major league baseball team. She started off with a win as well. Balkovec has been with the New York Yankees organisation for the past 3 years. She guided the Tampa Tarpons to a 9-6 win over Lakeland. Anthony Garcia hit a tie-breaking Grand Slam home run in the 7th to make it 8-4. They held on from there. Balkovec's jersey and hat are now going to be displayed in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Finally, some very sad news to finish with on Sport Today. The 24-year-old Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback, Dwayne Haskins, has died after being hit by a vehicle in Florida. He'd been training. Unfortunate passing of Dwayne Haskins. I'm truly heartbroken. That is it from us on Sport Today. Much more on the BBC Sport website, Masters Round 3. But from me and the rest of the team, goodbye for now.
Although on the cool side across much of Europe, high pressure building in. There is a lot of dry weather around. In fact, a fair amount of sunshine as well. Here's that area of high pressure. This weather system, though, has some force to it as it moves further east. There's not just some heavy rain associated with it, but we've seen some particularly strong winds impacting parts of Italy, the Adriatic, into the Balkans and Greece as well. And it's still blowing with some strong damaging winds in places during Sunday. Plenty of weather warnings out for the wind. And also, as you can see, this strip of heavy rain covering much of the eastern side of Europe. And cooler weather moving in here. France, though, warming up. Further north you are in Scandinavia, there's some snow around, though here too it's not particularly cold. Now, as we take a look at things for Monday, whilst many will continue to be dry, you can see the rain that's pushing into Portugal, the northwest of Spain. That's going to edge a little bit further eastwards with the cooler air. But for France and for the United Kingdom, milder conditions on the way in the week ahead, so not far from 20 degrees Celsius in London and above that figure in Paris. We're going to see some rain and cooler air reaching across more of Spain. Berlin looking mainly dry, and in Athens we'll continue with some occasional sunshine.
Welcome to Click. We're outside again. Sensors to track dangerous hotspots.
The robots are operating like a swarm of bees would.
I'd love to be a cyborg.
It won't be long before we're all living in this virtual universe. Spencer, where are you?
It looks like I really shouldn't be having salt.
We might be able to stop or even reverse the aging process.
I've just sat here and controlled things with my brain.
It's like technology telekinesis, isn't it?
The race is on to decarbonise aviation.
France voted for change 5 years ago. Emmanuel Macron said reform would weaken the appeal of the far right. But as France prepares to vote again, the far-right leader Marine Le Pen seems closer than ever to beating him. Join us live as France decides, here on BBC World News.
Since Russia invaded Ukraine, hundreds of thousands of people have passed through Lviv train station, hoping to reach safety.
Can you believe this?
Watch their extraordinary stories on Our World, Platform 5, Escaping Ukraine, on BBC World News.
New destinations around the globe and uncovering hidden sides to some of the world's favourite holiday hotspots. Now on BBC World News, The Travel Show.
What an incredible space!
Yeah, you like it?
So tell me the concept behind this place, because this is like no warehouse I could imagine.
Yeah, so it's an open storage. The first thing is that museums, they have a collection that you show for maybe just 3 to 6 to 7%. But that feels awkward because many things sink into oblivion or do not get the care that is necessary. So we opened our vaults with all the art collections to the audience. And we show how we work with the collection to clean paintings, to restore things that are not in a good shape. It's the audience who's the owner, and we are the very proud caretakers.
This theme or historical significance. Instead, they're organised by the conditions that will best preserve them.
This is brilliant. Because you don't expect to see all of these things in one place, because I can see some ceramics there, furniture.
This is very much a working building, where you get to see the inside story of a museum.
This is the paintings conservation studio. And this is where
the art handling, restoration and cleaning of items all happens here in full view.
Is this a Mondrian? This is a Mondrian painting.
Are you working on this?
Yeah, it's part of a research project which has 2 paintings by Mondrian.
So tell me about the work that you do here.
The research is about the yellow in particular. This one we have unframed, so now I can look at it more closely. I'm trying to find out if the yellow has just as much cracks as the other colors, or if the yellow has changed over time. Yeah.
So could we have a look at it under the microscope?
Yeah, I can position it under a microscope and then you can see through the computer.
Amazing. Amazing.
Here you can see the yellow layer that's on top of the white.
So, is that just age?
That's age, yeah.
Do you ever restore?
24, putting hundreds of thousands of items on display for the first time in generations. One of the biggest joys of all this open access is the direct contact with the people whose job it is to look after the exhibits. It's made Ruben here a man very much in demand.
Hello there.
Hey, hello.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I ask what you're doing, what you're looking for?
A visitor asked us online if the frame is original or not.
And is it?
I don't think it is. I don't think it is. If you look closely, you see that it's white and not brown. If it would be an original, it would have been an oak frame. Carved, so the ornaments would be carved out of the wood.
And not moulders?
Yeah, exactly.
So anyone can just send you an email and ask a question about a piece?
Exactly. The whole collection is actually visible online, and there's a button, and so you can just click on it and you can ask any question, and it comes into my mailbox.
So when you have members of the public coming through here, well, how does that feel for you? Is it distracting? What do you do?
In the beginning it was a little bit distracting, but I'm just supposed to continue my job and just do whatever I'm doing.
Do you get more questions from people?
Well, yeah, and they're
artworks enables people to ask questions that we might never have thought about before. So it also makes us think about our collection anew, and it opens up new perspectives on the collection, of course. So yeah, it's a wonderful thing.
Ruben looks after around 2,000 old masters, but there was one in particular he was keen to show me.
So this here is one of my all-time favorites. Portrait of a schoolboy from 1531. I think it's just wonderful because it's such a delicate portrait, and actually the most interesting visual pun in the painting is the small cartellino that he holds in his hands. And actually, so there's a Latin saying on the paper, and you can actually read it in mirror view through the paper. So yeah, it's wonderfully beautiful. Yeah, absolutely.
Just while I've been here, I think I've probably seen a dozen artworks I've never seen before that utterly captivate me. They're incredible. Yeah. What an amazing way to see art, so different.
This spring, it's hoped that more than 1 million people will head to the Keukenhof Gardens for the annual Tulip Festival. Commonly known as the world's largest flower park, it boasts a dazzling display of around 7 million buds blooming from March until May. This is the first time the park's open for 2 years, and they're celebrating with a historical theme, looking at how flowers have been represented across centuries of art, architecture and design. If you prefer music festivals to floral ones, Amsterdam's DGTL returns in April with a packed lineup of electronic artists. There's also a strong eco-theme, with the organisers claiming it's more sustainable to come along and dance the night away than it is to stay at home. They're aiming to become an entirely climate-neutral event, reducing the amount of waste per visitor to 0, encouraging people to arrive by public transport. Alkmaar's weekly cheese market rolls around again at the end of the month. In a tradition that dates back all the way to the year 1365, up to 30,000 kilos of cheese is ceremonially stacked in the main square. Porters in traditional dress then cart them away to be weighed and sold, marking the birth of the current monarch, King Willem-Alexander, on April 27th. As many as 1 million people arrive in Amsterdam to attend markets and toast the occasion at massive street parties. Just remember your orange outfit.
Still to come here on the Travel Show.
Low carbon luxury, ways to make your stay more sustainable.
Here we have dulls. They only grow in certain areas where fresh water meets the ocean.
And the tasty treats hidden on the Icelandic seabed.
So don't go away.
The Travel Show, sponsored by Turkish Airlines.
As we face the world's greatest environmental challenges, what we need most is solutions. Our new website, Future Planet, brings you stories of the people who are working to make the world a sustainable place. And because we're committed to carbon-conscious reporting, we'll work with local reporters from around the globe to bring you incredible insight with a reduced carbon footprint. Future Planet, solutions for a sustainable world.
The Travel Show, sponsored by Turkish Airlines.
Hi, I'm Juliette Kinsman. I am a sustainable hotel expert. I'm sustainability editor of Condé Nast Traveller magazine, and I also work with hotels to make sure that they tell their stories of being eco without any greenwash. So I think at some counts there are around 800,000 hotels in the world. That is a lot of businesses operating to give us our holidays and our business travel. But that also means a lot of energy used, a lot of sheets being changed, a lot of I think what we need to do is really think about when we spend time in a hotel, it's less about excess, indulgence, things, stuff, and more about just having really great experiences. So there's a new generation of hotels opening. It's really exciting, and one of them is Sorsha. Particularly methane, which won't be contributing to global warming in the same way.
We don't want to be a fusty old hotel. We want to be quite forward-thinking in our design and the vibes. So that's what we try to provide here at the hotel.
Another hotel I absolutely love for being much more transparent about exactly how they operate is Fogo Island in Newfoundland in Canada. They have a label, they call it the economic nutrition label, which shows you where their money goes. And what's most interesting about that is a lot of it stays with the staff and in local pockets, and that's what's key. So I'm going to give you 3 Book local, buy local. So choose a locally owned hotel where you know the money from that business is more likely to stay in local pockets, where the people who own it might be from that place, so they're more likely to care about the destination, better custodians. And that is one of the key ways to tackle many of the symptoms of all the problems we see in the world today. It's all about community economics, spending local, thinking global. Number 2, accreditations. What a sea of confusion that can be. We often want to look for a badge or a seal of approval from an organisation that has weighed up whether that business is responsible. Now, the thing is with travel and hotels, the GSTC, that's the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, they're somebody who works independently. It originally stemmed from the United Nations, and their framework is very reliable. But how do you know someone's actually following it? So be alert. Look at every hotel's own website, see how they talk about sustainability. They really need to not just tell you they're sustainable or eco or just use these words, they need to show you. So make sure they're talking about the right things, such as how they measure their energy consumption and how they look after their local community. Is it good for nature? Is it good for community? That's a better hotel to book. Number 3, this is a simple one, be minimalist. It's so tempting when they put all these things out for us to use, but this, not good. More stuff. Even this one that's dressed up to look a bit eco, it's going to end up in landfill. This is not good. This is the good guys, refillable. I really just try and minimize everything I use and think if that's going to end up in the garbage, I don't want to use it. Keep things simple, stay minimalistic.
Up next, we're on the hunt for some more tasty treats in some of the world's most exciting cities. Kate Hardy-Buckley headed to the Icelandic capital of Reykjavik.
Reykjavik, Iceland's capital on the edge of the Arctic Circle, gets very little sunlight during the winter months, and its remoteness has meant that people have always had to come up with ingenious ways Icelanders maintained a simple diet, using techniques such as fermentation, dehydration, and smoking to prepare their food. Chef Fanny Dorr loves to experiment with traditional ingredients to create new flavors, and she's invited me to the Lady Brewery for a drink to warm up.
I would say what's special seaweed and try to put my On it. For example, utilizing seaweed with vegetables to get like more umami flavors into it.
Tell me what you'd like me to bring for you.
I would love for you to go and fetch me some salmon. I would also love if you could meet Raxel, my friend, and go foraging seaweed with her.
I love foraging.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what you think about foraging in Iceland in late November.
Yeah. I was kind of hoping you might have some indoor activities. I start off exploring a food source that's undergone a revival in Icelandic cuisine: seaweed. Ragnhildur Axel has foraged the superfood.
Dry those for funny. Icelanders used to be ashamed of going to pick the seaweed, and they would hide it, that they were picking dulse. But now it's a really valuable raw material.
We also find the much sought after sea truffle. People say it tastes like truffles from Tuscany. It's got that distinctly umami flavor.
In Icelandic, it's called þangskegg. It's seaweed beard.
Seaweed beard?
Yeah, because it looks like beard.
I next travel 1 hour south of the capital to the West Ranga River to meet the man known as the Salmon Whisperer. Woo! And then I pull back?
Yeah, pull back, stop and wait a little bit. Okay, good.
The fishing season is over, but we've secured a special permit to chance our luck. At what stage does the salmon reach the river?
In the middle of June. And then in October, they put their eggs here in the river, and the eggs becomes a little parch. And when they are getting big enough, then they go to the sea to feed up, and then they come back up to the river 1 or 2 years later, just to take part in the love life here. It's a quite big industry just for travelers to come and fish in Iceland for salmon, because our salmon stock is quite good. It's kind of a mecca for many people to come here and fish for salmon.
Despite Stefan's skills and my enthusiasm, the fish aren't biting. I think we're going to give it a few more minutes.
We can always use that.
Yay! The backup option. Thank you so much, Harpa. Thank you. I've returned to the Lady Brewery where I met Chef Fanny to find out more about the women crafting these unique beers.
This is
also made an interesting discovery about the origins of brewing beer.
It was always a kitchen job, so it was always in the hands of women throughout the centuries.
So it was women who created beer?
Yes.
Wow.
And like they had these pointy hats, the alewives. They were sweeping the corn, and they had like the cat, the black cat, and the big pot, and they were, you know, witches. That's how we are interpreting this history of beer and beer making.
I meet Chef Fanny at her restaurant, Hnos.
Let's use this.
Yes, the salt with the truffle seaweed. What are then the sort of traditional Icelandic flavors that you're playing on?
It's the smoke, and it's the pickling, and it's the freshness of the fish. You don't need to do much because the product already is amazing. It's a beurre blanc sauce. It's got a lot of butter, and the butter has been smoked. So this is the dulse that you brought to me.
Yeah.
And then this is sugar kelp. I use both of those seaweed to make my smoked carrots.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use as a...
This looks like smoked salmon.
I'm just going to put a little bit of the seaweed in some apple cider vinegar. A lot of people think that we're only about fermented food. I always say it's a part of us. It's not what a typical Icelander will eat on a day-to-day basis. Our cuisine in Iceland is more about utilizing, you know, what we have learned living on this island, and what we have now is an abundance of fresh
got that umami flavor from the dulse.
Yeah.
So this is the pickled seaweed.
Tastes completely different.
That's almost fizzy.
Yeah.
That's really good, Fanny.
Cheers. Cheers.
Lucy's in Naples to explore the archaeological treasures being opened to the public for the very first time.
Oh my God. Yes. Look at this. This is the star.
We're on social media too. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Just search for BBC Travel. Bye-bye.
The Travel Show, sponsored by Turkish Airlines.
Hello. Central parts of the USA are going to be seeing some severe weather in the week ahead, a risk of tornadoes as well. For now, some quite strong winds, and there's fire danger as well. We've also got a weather system that's just pushing across parts of Canada and the north of the USA, taking a little snow in places, and there's a big turnaround in temperatures on the way. We've got western parts of the USA which have been warmer than average, which will its way northwards, with the risk of flooding with that rain. Actually much cooler air following on behind as well. High pressure building in across much of Europe behind this weather system, taking some wet weather on into parts of Turkey on Monday. So actually looking fairly settled now. For now, some really strong winds blowing through the Adriatic and into the Balkans and Greece. They are gradually going to be easing, though still breezy close to this weather system to the east as we go on through Monday. So turning wetter across parts of Iberia and cooler too. Now on the satellite picture, we've got a tropical weather system close to the bringing heavy flooding downpours in places. In fact, the wettest spots could amass, well, several hundred millimetres of rain. So that's certainly something that needs to be watched. Also seeing a bit of wet weather pushing on towards southern parts of Japan. Much warmer than average in China, though it will be turning a bit cooler. Satellite picture in Australia, this weather system here pushing across southern areas, taking a few showers as well. But it is drier than it's been across eastern parts at the moment, though in New Zealand it'll be turning wetter towards the south and west of the South Island and into the North Island as well as we go through the week ahead. This is a former tropical weather system which will be turning things wetter across the North Island. That's it for now. There is more, as ever, online.
Now showing on BBC Real.
Sorry. Okay, confession time. I'm someone with a slightly annoying tendency to be late, but I'm not alone in being punctually challenged. So what's going on?
Really need to focus on bringing transmission down.
You've been in office for some time. What are you doing about it?
This question is without context.
What the turnout was, it was over 70%. You know how many seats your party got? 0, Ms.
We failed to win seats, but we got more votes than previous election.
It's a risk you're taking.
I take risks every day.
The reason you haven't divorced is that you simply can't afford it.
You're right about that.
Hard Talk, this week on BBC World News.
Imran Khan ahead of a vote of no confidence.
hello. We start with the UK Prime Minister because Boris Johnson has travelled to Kyiv to hold face-to-face talks with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Downing Street says they are discussing the UK's long-term support to Ukraine, and the Prime Minister will set out a new package of financial and military aid, which includes 120 armoured vehicles and new anti-ship missile systems. It comes as Ukrainian officials say 10 humanitarian corridors to evacuate people from regions besieged by Russian forces have been agreed for today. It's thought around 10,000 people have escaped from cities in the south and east through those means over the past 2 days. President Zelensky says a firm global response is needed after yesterday's missile strike on a railway station in Kramatorsk, which killed at least 50 people. Boris Johnson said that this was an opportunity to ensure that Ukraine was never invaded again.
Heraclitus, I think, said war is the father of all things. Is a clarity about the vision of a future for Ukraine, where together with friends and partners, we, the UK and others, supply the equipment, the technology, the know-how, the intelligence, so that Ukraine will never be invaded again, so that Ukraine is so fortified and so protected that Ukraine can never be bullied again, never be blackmailed again, never be threatened in the same way again. In the meantime, there is a huge amount to do to make sure that Ukraine is successful, that Ukraine wins, and that Putin must fail.
Well, President Zelensky thanked the UK government for its support and called on other nations to follow suit.
We are especially grateful for this to happen. This is a true reflection of the decisive and significant support to Ukraine from United Kingdom, and we always are grateful for that. We shall always remember that. Just recently we had a meeting in Kiev, and you've recalled this. We draw some conclusions on our joint work in the frames of a strategic dialogue. We were planning future projects. We were wandering around Kiev, and today you can see in your own eyes how our country looks like, you know, how our village conclusion. It's our common conclusion. We have to exert even more pressure on the Russian Federation, to exert pressure through supporting Ukraine in defending itself. We have to exert pressure in the form of sanctions, and I'm grateful to the United Kingdom that continues and intensifies the sanctions and also provides significant support of Ukraine by reinforcing our defense capacities. The other democratic Western countries should follow the example of the United Kingdom.
Well, our correspondent Yugita Lamai told me how significant this meeting was.
Well, with Prime Minister Boris Johnson now coming here after the European Commission President, this is a European show of solidarity for Ukraine. It is significant in the sense that, you know, the Prime Minister, you know, also announced something for Ukraine, which is those armoured vehicles, the anti-ship missile systems. Yesterday, there was an announcement of £100 million in weapons to this country, which include anti-tank missiles and anti-aircraft missiles, and basically discussing the road ahead. A show of solidarity from Europe, a continued sense of support, not just in words, but also in actions in terms of providing weapons, which is the primary thing that Ukraine is asking for at the moment, in addition to more pressure on Russia, intensifying sanctions against the country.
The Pakistan Parliament is beginning a vote now. angry scenes in Parliament between Mr Khan's supporters and opponents. Last Monday, the Supreme Court ruled that he acted unconstitutionally when he asked the President to dissolve Parliament before the vote could take place. Dr Aisha Siddiqa is Senior Fellow at King's College London and an expert in civil-military relations in the South Asia region.
Generally believe that it's the worsening of this relationship which has led to the crisis or led to the situation where the political opposition was encouraged to raise their voice against Khan, and thus creating the conditions which now have led to where Khan and Pakistan stand.
Imran Khan is claiming
whatsoever of a conspiracy, an American conspiracy to remove Imran Khan. I mean, they're making it look like regime change, which is an atrocious claim.
Dr Aisha Siddiqa there. Well, let's just take you live to the Pakistani Parliament, where that vote is getting underway, that vote on a no-confidence motion against Prime Minister Imran Khan, which was supposed to begin more than 13 hours ago. Just minutes before it started, the Speaker of the National Assembly also resigned. Stay with us, we'll bring you more on that. You're watching BBC News.
Hello, on the cool side across much of Europe, high pressure building in. There is a lot of dry weather around. In fact, a fair amount of sunshine as well. Here's that area of high pressure. This weather system, though, has some force to it as it moves further east. There's not just some heavy rain associated with it, but we've seen some particularly strong winds impacting parts of Italy, the Adriatic, into the Balkans and Greece as well. And it's still blowing with some strong damaging winds in places during Sunday. Plenty of weather warnings out for the wind. And also, as you can see, this strip of heavy rain covering much of the eastern side of Europe down towards the southeast, and rain into parts of Greece as well, though not the further south you are. Drier looking picture into Italy, across much of Iberia too, but there's a weather system poised to move in. There will be wet and cooler weather moving in here. France, though, warming up. Further north you are in Scandinavia, there's some snow around, though here too it's not particularly cold. Now, as we take a look at things for Monday, whilst many will continue to be dry, you can see the rain that's pushing into Portugal, the northwest of Spain. That's going to edge a little bit further eastwards with the cooler air. But for France and for the United Kingdom, milder conditions on the way in the week ahead, so not far from 20 degrees Celsius in London and above that figure in Paris. We're going to see some rain and cooler air reaching across more of Spain. Berlin looking mainly dry, and in Athens we'll continue with some occasional sunshine.
Shortly in South Africa. all news is international.
The impact on Europe and the rest of the world would be devastating.
So, for in-depth analysis of the biggest stories from the US and around the world,
relations between Russia and the West have reached a new low.
join our team and find out what is really going on.
BBC World News America.
More than a month on from Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and Russian forces are retreating from areas around Kyiv, having met fierce resistance from the Ukrainian army and civilians. Now on BBC World News, Frank Gardner explains why Putin's plan has so far failed.
This is now shockingly familiar. Death and destruction right on Europe's eastern flank. Because Russia's invasion has shattered cities. It's killed thousands, and it's driven millions from their homes. And now President Putin's war machine is accused of genocide and atrocious war crimes. Almost no one expected Ukraine to be able to stand up to the might of the Russian army. But this invasion has not gone according to the Kremlin's plans. It's surprised everyone, and to be honest, including me, as to how poorly the Russian army has performed in this war. So what we're going to try and do here is break this down and explain how Putin's plan, his initial plan, went wrong, and what are the options from here. Russia's forces outnumber Ukraine's by several times. They've attacked Ukraine on 3 fronts, with tanks, planes, warships, all aiming for a swift victory and a collapse of Ukraine's government. Well, that hasn't happened. So how does all this translate into progress for Russia on the map? Well, you can see the red areas here. They have definitely bitten off a significant chunk of Ukrainian territory, possibly more than they can handle, but they have made gains in the south. But in the north, the Ukrainians have largely held off the Russians, and they've stalled their advance. As Russian troops have withdrawn from towns around Kyiv, they've been accused of carrying out atrocities on the civilian population. Ukraine's president calls it genocide. Russia says it's fake news. So what was Moscow's original plan for Ukraine in this war?
Мы будем стремиться к демилитаризации и денацификации Украины, а также преданию суду тех, кто совершил многочисленные кровавые преступления против мирных жителей, в том числе и граждан Российской Федерации.
Put simply, Putin wants to bring Ukraine back into Moscow's orbit. No joining NATO, no joining the European Union. In fact, he'd like to bring it back to where it was before it had a change of government in 2014, when a pro-Moscow government was replaced by a pro-Western one. Putin wants to see a complete restructuring of the whole security apparatus for Eastern Europe. To make that happen, Putin needed regime change in Kyiv, the capital, because there was no way that President Zelensky and the Ukrainian government were going to bow to Moscow's demands. Hence, the invasion. When the invasion began on February the 24th, it was a 3-pronged attack. From the south, using Crimea as a springboard, from the east, the Donbass, and from the north, where Belarus helped Russia launch this invasion. The initial idea behind the invasion was a pretty simple one. Seize the capital Kyiv, secure all the important sites in the main cities, kill or capture President Zelensky or let him run away, and replace his government with the sympathetic pro-Moscow one. Well, it hasn't worked out that way. Ukraine stood its ground. Its army has been outnumbered and outgunned, but its people have been fighting back hard, and their morale is pretty high, extraordinarily high given what they've suffered. Russian tactics have been often very poor. The commanders have failed to combine infantry with tanks and artillery to the best effect. They've missed have got bogged down and stalled as they wait for fuel and supplies, and that makes them an easy target. And yet Russia's President Vladimir Putin, who is after all the man behind this invasion, says it's all going to plan.
Уважаемые товарищи, хочу сказать, что специальная военная операция идет в строгом соответствии с графиком, по плану. Все поставленные задачи успешно решаются.
I'm haunted by the sense that this will turn out to be the first phase in a much bigger European crisis.
Professor Michael Clarke is one of the leading experts on military strategy in Britain. And I think he's as surprised as I am at the shortcomings of the Russian military. In the weeks and days building up to this invasion, the world looked at this army of nearly 200,000 that massed on the borders, and we were told it's been, huge capital investment, it's been upgraded. What's gone wrong with it? What are their mistakes?
The army was not modernized in the way that everybody thought. I mean, the famous phrase has been used many times because of structural reasons, that they didn't give enough credence to logistics. They made the fatal mistake of underestimating their enemy. They assumed that it would be a quick campaign, so they were only equipped for a few days. They set off in quite difficult weather, and they didn't have any warm weather clothing. I mean, the mistakes went on and on and on. And we knew that the Russian army had these sorts of deficiencies, but we didn't believe that they would not have corrected them for this sort of operation, where they employed effectively half of their ground forces. And we thought, well, these are the best half that they have. They must have got it right. They must have overcome all of the things that used to be wrong with the old Red Army, but apparently not.
So given all of that, it didn't take too long before Russian forces found themselves overstretched, spread out over too many fronts, and that has meant problems with supplies, fuel, and morale. So, time for a plan B.
This is unreal. It's like walking through a World War II film set. This was the center of Grozny. These were 12, 15 stories.
Russian military doctrine when it comes to taking cities. That doctrine means that if you can't get into the city with infantry and tanks, if there's too much resistance, they simply stand off and batter it with artillery, rockets, missiles and drones from a distance. It happened in Grozny in Chechnya, it's happened in Aleppo, and it's happened in Mariupol. Nowhere has been hit harder than that southern city of Mariupol. Before the war, it had a population of nearly 500,000. Today, it's 90% damaged or destroyed. The place is a ghost town. It's a hub.
Better. And the Russians, remember, it's a big military force. They can bring in more troops. More than anything, they've got heavy firepower. And this is what the Russians always rely on. Ultimately, the Russians could still, after a fashion, prevail in this war if they use their heavy firepower. They can bring in more missiles as they get more, particularly if they get some from China. They can bring in their good old-fashioned artillery with its 15 to 20-mile range, and they can pound cities, they can pound positions. And ultimately, because they always have superior numbers to the Ukrainians can't fight forever. There's only so much that flesh and blood can do. And the Russians must be thinking that if they keep the pressure up, even if it's inefficient, eventually the Ukrainians will crack at more than one place simultaneously.
Of the Soviet army, the Red Army fighting in Afghanistan from 1979 to the late 1980s, Russia lost roughly 15,000 troops. Now, already the most conservative estimate of troops killed in this war so far is around 7,000. Ukraine says it's more than double that. That's a lot of funerals taking place in Russia. Now, it might seem that Russia is prepared to throw unlimited amount of resources at what it calls this special military operation, in other words, the war in Ukraine. There are aspects of Russian culture and society that play out into this whole military campaign.
Suddenly you have to, know everything about from Kiev Rus to, javelins. For me, it's how it all, interconnects and...
Yes. And to get a view on that, I spoke to Katerina Volchuk because she spent the last 30 years examining Russian society. She's a leading expert at the University of Birmingham.
Putin certainly has developed a bit of sort of passion for history. So he's done a lot of reading on the history of Russia and Ukraine and developed his own interpretation, but also a kind of obsession with Ukraine. And even before the pandemic, we believe that he was fairly isolated. He already started giving interviews on the historical unity . 14th century. So this has become his interest, and he certainly regards Ukraine as an artificial construct. It is basically a byproduct of Western plotting against Russia. He blames the Poles or he blames Austro-Hungarians, but he doesn't regard Ukraine as a viable state and, most importantly, a nation. Hence this sort of perplexing rhetoric when it comes to Ukraine. On the one hand, we are one people. Russia moves in to protect the Russian speakers in Ukraine. On the other hand, the invasion and the most brutal aspects of it happen in the Russian-speaking parts of functioning well, but is still there, means that Russia can go for a long time, not least because of this industrial scale censorship in Russia. It can gloss over the casualties, and the media present it as a success story.
Let's just be clear about one thing though, because as with almost any conflict, social media and mainstream news don't necessarily paint a really accurate picture of what's going on the ground. And propaganda plays a huge part in this on both sides. In press briefings, in tweets, in video clips that are put up online. The big question now is, where does Mr. Putin go from here? Because this is, after all, his war, his goals, his aims. And the problem is that the two sides, Russia and Ukraine, are still far apart in terms of what they're prepared to settle for. Russia can't afford a big long-term occupation. It can't hold down the whole country. It hasn't got enough troops. So it will want to settle for some sort of territorial compromise. It's not going to give up Crimea, and it may be reluctant to give up the territorial gains it's made so far. But Ukraine has said it doesn't want to give up 1 inch of territory.
What the West has done for. There's no point in giving them weapon systems that would take time for them to learn. And so we've given them everything we can. The problem for Ukraine is that these weapons have all been used in an excellent defensive structure, but can it be sustained? Do they have sustainment? And sustainment isn't just the weapon systems, of course.
At what point are we risking escalation from Russia and some kind of retaliation against NATO, which has tried very hard not to get militarily involved in this beyond supplying weapons?
But there is a great danger as this crisis goes on. It will not lapse into being a grumbling war,